For many, a digitized superhero experience is rooted in the genres of beat-em-up and open-world presentations. But as the years progressed alongside the rise of mobile gaming, so did the viable avenues of putting characters from the DC and Marvel universes into games more varied in nature and accessible to gamers looking to do more than the expected and at times mundane. Marvel attached itself to Firaxis Games, a development team that mastered the art of creating tactical, strategy-based games including XCOM and Civilization, mixing fresh faces and long-established heroes and villains. Firaxis Games wanted to create another memorable experience for players who enjoy such brain-testing games. I was definitely intrigued to see how the usually epic comic book battles could be portrayed using cards, while potentially providing an interesting story featuring some characters not getting as much spotlight as their more famous and infamous counterparts. With the resurrection of Lilith, a sorceress known as the Mother of all Demons by the hands of the terrorist group Hydra, the player is tasked with stopping this catastrophic event by taking control of several Marvel characters, including Blade, Iron Man, the Robbie Reyes' version of Ghost Rider, and a player-created avatar known as the Hunter, Lilith's offspring and the person responsible for defeating her initially. Housing the famed, though believed inexperienced Midnight Sons of Blade, Ghost Rider, Magic, and Nico Minoru initially, is the Abbey, an old church-like building sporting an expansive exterior to explore and discover new traversal powers alongside mysteries and collectibles. The Abbey is the game's hub, alongside the typical menu pulled up using the Start button, with the latter allowing players to customize each hero's card deck for battle, and even purchase and or equip clothing items and color swatches for said attires. Inside the Abbey is the option of taking part in daily missions, interacting with fellow sons, and completing automated tasks, including one-on-one training for temporary character boost, upgrading card abilities, sending a hero into operations to attain a new maneuver, and research in the Abbey's Forge section. They usually yield some impressive additions to both the Abbey's general facilities, as well as improving certain combat tactics, like making knockback attacks in battle do more damage. Not to mention crafting and dismantling card-based abilities via the Forge's anvil. Completing Midnight Suns is actually a grind no matter how good the player is at strategic, turn-based games, as it demands the player to take part in a mixture of unique story missions that usually introduces what becomes the norm for general missions, needed to be completed between those story battles. Most of these missions, story or general, have rather simplistic goals for victory like defend the device, defeat the heavy enemies, and simply survive 3 waves of copious foes. Beyond the story and its missions that will take players around 20 hours to complete without grinding for some abilities is the downtime between missions. Outside of the previously mentioned automated actions and exploring the rather diverse Abbey's grounds, it's interacting with the growing Midnight Suns as a family. Through a menu-based group chat, simply talking to the available characters as indicated by a glowing blue light over their heads, or as dictated by the game itself. Players will have the Hunter building a friendship with each playable hero that, when maxed at level 5, unlocks a character-specific legendary challenge that acts more as a puzzle than the typical battle scenario used during regular missions. It is through this randomized grind of talking, sitting around, and goofing off with every hero in hopes of upgrading the Hunter's personal relationships with them that the created character improves his alignment with his light and dark sides. It is necessary for the player to reach maximum level of 200 light and dark points by using dialogue choices and performing certain attacks based in the 2 sides if someone is looking for full trophy or achievement completion, an accomplishment I have yet to attain in regards to the dark side, and will most likely need to spend another 10 or so hours via New Game Plus to achieve. As a complete package as of this time, a season pass is already available with DLC featuring new characters coming in the near future. Midnight Suns is a beefy experience that will demand the player to sink in anywhere between 50 to 70 hours before fully completing the game. Marvel's Midnight Suns walks a fine line between giving a player the feeling of being overwhelmingly powerful and shockingly susceptible to death at any given moment during a battle, no matter the difficulty. With a customizable card deck attached to each hero, players enter every battle with 3 card usages per round. One move option which can be turned into a knockback scenario against an enemy instead of just making a simple dash across the battlefield. Use an item that can range from curing an ally of ailments like bleed or corruption that does significant damage to a sun per round to giving each attack by a hero leech, so enemies' health is drained to heal the hero, and redraw up to 2 cards in a player's current deck. Thankfully, battles are in no way static when it comes to strategy beyond attack animations and how anything from faceless goons to prominent super bosses like Fallen Venom act from round to round. One of the main reasons for any battle's unpredictability is the randomized nature cards are administered at the beginning of the battle, depending on the card deck organized by the player beforehand, and what heroes are being used at that time. These cards don't just act as ways to perform offensive maneuvers, as some can increase the amount of redraws a player can perform per round, reset the deck completely, and most helpfully, depending on when used, can decrease the amount of heroism points needed to use certain cards. On the screen's right-hand side during a fight is the heroism meter. Certain cards like the Hunter's Heal ability adds to the heroism meter, while Spider-Man's Web Throw costs 2 heroism points. By upgrading certain abilities and even modifying their actions via the Abbey's training facility, and collecting currency both by moving around and picking up glowing orbs, completing specific missions, and selling off or breaking down particular items. Players will be stacking and exhausting up to 10 heroism points during a battle, especially later in the game. Things like using environmental attacks also cost heroism points, as well as playing the random hero card that usually costs 4 heroism points, and is increased in damage output alongside the teamwork stat that increases the more the hunter befriends his allies. With the amount of options in regards to building a card deck, though it is somewhat restricted due to certain card types like the aforementioned heroism cards being limited to 2 slots in an 8-slot deck, the enemy variation leaves something to be desired. There are smaller, less threatening grunts complemented by heavy foes that, of course, hit harder, have more abilities like armor, and or can buff their allies. Sadly, the bosses are lacking in number, and to a certain extent, presentation. There are only 6 bosses, not counting the final one, with 4 of those 6 being spread across at least 3 missions apiece. To top it off, during these boss battles, the bosses need to be down at least 2 times, while sporting significant health pools, defensive and offensive stats, and the ability to attack twice per round. As expected, RNG does come into play at times, with enemies large and small landing critical hits early in a round. Ganging up on a particular hero even if the icon above their head beside their health bar dictates they will attack another sun, the enemy waves varying in numbers unexpectedly, and those previously defeated bosses showing up during general missions with only 1 health bar, but can change a simple mission into an unnecessarily long-winded encounter. On the opposite end is the hero presentation in terms of combat variety. The hunter can be a forceful jack-of-all-trades depending on how the player sets up their deck, including making the avatar a supportive ally, a hard-hitting tank, or an environmental expert thanks to how the hunter has more card options than any other character. Nico is a fantastic support character to buff allies and weaken enemies, while Magic will use her portals to create knockback opportunities into other foes or even off the ledge of a building. The tank-like nature of Captain Marvel can have her taunt enemies for counterattacks at the end of a round, while Ghost Rider will actually sacrifice health to do hefty damage. Blades' sword and guns can have enemies bleeding all over the place, as will Wolverine's claws. Each character levels up manually and automatically, with certain missions dictating particular characters needing to be a part of said battle. If the player hasn't been using that character, the hero will be underleveled, and potentially an easy down even if the game attempts to do an average leveling across the heroes. The experience cap alleviates this problem slightly, as it doesn't take much grinding to get everyone around the same level, even with those cons in regards to the battle scenarios. The general flow of combat alongside the planning stages leading up to each mission makes for an enthralling experience from beginning to end, and post-game, with players given the option of continuously playing through the same non-story missions. Beyond the progress of battle is the structure of each day. Midnight Suns has a day and night cycle, with the daytime used to prepare and perform those automated tasks, explore the Abbey, and take part in missions. Nighttime, however, is mostly rooted in hero interactivity. While the hunter can spend quality time with each available hero during the day, say go bird watching or lounging by the pool, it is during these night-based missions that things get a little wacky in terms of characterization, like Blade creating a book club with Captain Marvel and Captain America. While it's interesting to see these characters letting their figurative hair down, the presentation is rather off-putting compared to everything else, including the seriousness of their current situation. Trying to turn every sun, both mainstay and temporary, into the hunter's new best friend is the game's most time-consuming aspect, especially if the player is looking for full completion, because the friendship simulator aspect is mostly random, with certain characters being available one day and not for multiple subsequent hours. The dialogue between the hunter and the suns definitely ranges from emotionally gripping to embarrassingly childlike, while the player usually gets the option of choosing light and dark dialogue choices. In a lot of ways, these character interactions make up for the rather minuscule story, where a majority of the narrative's progression is just setting up scenarios to start the next mission, like figuring out how to expel Lilith's corruption from Venom after he tore up downtown New York by, of course, luring him into a church with a bell tower. There are some nice twists to the story, though, including the inclusion of Johnny Blaze and Bruce Banner, with certain playable characters unfortunately becoming available far too late in the narrative to fully enjoy their talents without post-game action. The ending definitely leaves something to be desired, with a cliffhanger in regards to the hunter and a significant tease for either a sequel or DLC-oriented story mission. The game's other time sink is exploring the Abbey, the maze-like experience that is moving through the Abbey's outskirts and discovering new abilities strictly used for opening up more avenues to see what lurks beyond the cracked walls and abandoned buildings, usually housing some information about the times of a deceased Agatha Harkness, a young Scarlet Witch, the caretaker who runs the Abbey, and the hunter's youthful exploits. Chests of varying quality are located mostly throughout the Abbey's exterior, with ancient keys being needed to unlock these containers, usually sporting color palettes for clothes and currency. Though upgrading the arcane level by finding those lore writings will forego the need for keys to unlock common chests. If there's one obvious drawback in regards to the Abyss's mysteries, is the lack of some optional bosses and missions. Though most of the customizable clothing options are either unlocked through in-game progress and spending the gloss currency, there are some impressive costumes that can only be bought by using real money. Why these microtransactions were implemented even on a small scale is a head-scratcher, considering this isn't a games-as-a-service offering. Technically, Midnight Suns is a mixed bag. A majority of the time the game runs rather smoothly, both in and out of battle. But when Suns has issues, they are overbearing, including significant frame rate drops during certain maneuvers, enemies taking odd amounts of time to perform an action, giving the impression the game is frozen, and significant graphical glitches, including heroes falling through the world during a fight, the environment exploding in blinding white light, and camera issues. Most of these problems thankfully fix themselves and won't have the player restarting an entire encounter. It also must be noted how small the information text is on the cards during a battle. The voice acting must be commended, with some very familiar talent adding a level of authenticity to each character, like Michael Jai White as Blade, Steve Blum portraying Wolverine like it's the 1990s, and Laura Bailey arguably stealing the figurative show as Magic. Graphically, however, this original cross-generational release looks like something stuck from the mid-8th generation. It's hard to understand why PS4 and Xbox One owners couldn't play this one at the same time with PC and 9th generation gamers, as it doesn't seem too overpowered for 8th generation consoles. Though the extracurriculars do help forge bonds between the players' custom character and Marvel's heroes, they take away from valuable time that could have been used to fight more and more of Hydra and the mother of all demons' forces via the incredibly entertaining combat system, a system that will have fans of the genre coming back time and time again to test out the limits of their deck building prowess. Card-based strategy games aren't for everyone, but Firaxis does a mostly masterful job of creating a game easy enough to get into for both novices and experienced gamers alike. The friendship grind and general RNG moments definitely slows down what is mostly an exciting and fun experience, even if the story doesn't feel as fleshed out or impressive as its source material. Surprisingly, only a month after its release, Midnight Suns is getting discounts, making it an easy recommendation as it not only won't break the bank, but also gives players a reason to buy the season pass with the money left over. Gamers who think there's no better feeling than pulling off a successful plan in turn-based form that defeats a mass wave of enemies will be as happy as a group of buddies enjoying a cheesy 1980s action movie.
Let's show them how it's done.
We've done it!
We face a hungering elder god?
Entertainment on the eve of battle? Yes.
Yay, for fun! Ileana keeps the limbo fully stocked, so refreshments are a portal away, just ask. Quiet, quiet! Here we go!
Clint and Natasha always referenced the slobs against the snobs. Never understood what it meant.
Until recently, it could have been the Midnight Suns against the Avengers.
That makes Tony the snob.
And Nico is definitely the slob.
I'll own it.